What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the Big 10 college football betting preview. I'm Stuckey. Joining me, as always, my fellow BBOC co-host, Collin WIlson. This is part one. We will go top to bottom. In part two, we will cover the second half of the Big 10, so 9 and 9. And we will summarize all of our favorite bets, conference champion picks, all of that good stuff at the end of part two. Should be out by the time you're listening to this, so make sure you check that out. Also, call to action. This is the most important time to leave a 5-star review. It really helps us out this time of the year. So if you can just take a minute or so, please go and do that. You can say whatever you want. It would really help us out. And I'm going to do a bunch of contests. I'll do some giveaways. So if you leave a 5-star review, I really appreciate you. Appreciate all of you for tuning in again. So excited to go through all of the Power 4 conference previews with Collin. We'll be knocking out the SEC tonight in 2 parts as well. We'll do the Big 12, which is going to be exciting, and the ACC. Also this weekend, we'll throw in Notre Dame and UConn, the Independents, in that episode as well. And if you haven't checked out all of the Group of 5 episodes, just absolutely jam-packed with actionable info and just good stuff on every single team as we march closer to the start of the 2025 college football season. Another quick announcement, week 0, we have our watch party, BBOC watch party. Collin will be there, Duck will be there, Breeze, Mitchell. Make sure you come out. You don't have to RSVP or anything. We're going to Joe's. We were there in March for March Madness event. It was awesome. They know how to do it right. It's a great bar. They're gonna be opening up at 11 in the morning, and we'll be there for the Kansas State, Iowa State kickoff, and then we'll be there all day and night. So come have some drinks with us. Let me buy you drinks, and just show up. Looking forward. And we have a fantasy flex event too, where people will draft like a fantasy team with Kerner and Rayvon, who will be there also. So should be a blast and a great way to kick off the season. But let's get right into the Big 10. Collin, I guess I'll stop rambling for a second. How are you? Are you excited to talk Big 10? I have a lot to say about almost every single one of these teams.
I'm excited for this Conference of Champions. I guess we have to say that. I have to say that as an SEC homer. I guess you as a migrated SEC homer, we have to say Big 10 is Conference of Champions. I'm so excited that you and I are going to do the Power 4. I just got done going to Boston and Cape Cod fishing with my son before I put him in a dorm at the University of Arkansas. Went to Fenway, saw the Royals get beat, knocked out of the playoff race for all intents and purposes. So it's good to say goodbye to baseball completely for me. You and I doing Power 4. This is what you and I were made for. And I don't know what that Big 12 episode is going to be. I imagine it being like when all the house moms show up for like wine and like paint a blank canvas. Like, I don't know what the hell is going to come out of that Big 12 pod, but this one, I feel like we have extreme deliverables that we need to hit on for Big 10.
Yes. Well, it is conference championships. The last 2 national championships come from the Big 10, that being Michigan and Ohio State, who will, of course, kick off in the game at the end of the season once again. I guess we'll start with Ohio State, who is the preseason favorite to win the Big 10. Best number you can find out there, plus 250. Win total, 10.5, juiced a bit to the under. The under's taken a little bit of money throughout the summer. There's a lot of change with this Ohio State team. And the theme of the Big 10 is, if you could figure out the quarterbacks, you're going to be able to figure out the Big 10. Easier said than done, but there's a lot of new quarterbacks throughout the conference, and specifically with the top teams. That's not just in the Big 10. That's also in the SEC. So I don't think that there's, as of right now at least, there's not one team where you're like, this team is so much better than everybody else. It is as wide open as you're going to see in college football, which I think is going to make for a great season and a great college football playoff. So there's a lot of questions with this Ohio State team, starting with the quarterback. Howard obviously got drafted after leading Ohio State to a national title. Is it Julian Sayin time? I don't know. It's not getting the most rave reviews in camp. Keenholz. Is it Keenholz or Kienholz? I think it's Keenholz.
I say Kienholz. So
you say Kienholz, I'll say Keenholz, so one of us will be right. He's more of like a dual threat. He might even have some packages if Sam wins the job. It's presumed that he's going to, but it seems like it's a little closer than maybe some would have thought. His size maybe could be an issue, and then obviously the learning curve. How quickly is he going to get up to speed? He's a young kid, so there's certainly questions at quarterback. You lose both of your running backs to the round 2 of the NFL draft, and Henderson and Judkins. Still think that they'll be okay there, but maybe down a notch with Peoples and Donaldson. Their wide receiver room's obviously stacked. You lose Egbuka to the NFL, but Smith and Tate are back. Innes takes over at the slot. Look out for Graham as well. Tight end, you had Max Clare from Purdue, who's great receiving tight end. And then the offensive line has questions. You lost Simmons, Fryer, McLaughlin. So your projected starting offensive line, you got a Rice transfer at left tackle, Montgomery, Hinsman, and Chabola. They did start in the interior in the playoffs, so there's some experience there. And then your right tackle's probably going to be, I think, a returner who's kicked out there in Seavold, but I'm not positive yet. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely questions on the offensive line. We'll see how it all comes together. There's a new offensive coordinator, internal hire. And then on the defense, there's some questions as well. I think on the defensive line in particular. And then in the secondary, I'm curious to see how it all plays out. Because Caleb Downs, I mean, this Ohio State team is, you have arguably the best offensive player, the best defensive player. Jeremiah Smith, Caleb Downs. How much can they impact the game in these big games for Ohio State? That and a quarterback is going to decide how far this team can go. But Downs, is he going to play more? Can he play more nickel? I mean, in the playoffs, he was playing almost down to the box, like right next to the linebacker. Mm-hmm. Hancock, who is just the unheralded, I think, leader of that defense. Him being able to play free safety and allowing Downs to have that flexibility, I think really unlocked the potential of that defense. So we'll see how it all comes together with all of the positions and who's playing nickel, who's playing corner, who's playing safety. You got McLean, Hartford. There's just a lot of guys that we'll see how it all shakes out. There's a potential that Smith could eventually go number 1 overall. By the way, that hasn't happened with a receiver since 1996. And Downs, NFL doesn't value like an in-the-box guy as much, but maybe he goes top 10 eventually. That hasn't happened since Sean Taylor. One of my biggest questions for this team also, Matt Patricia, the defensive coordinator, big downgrade, I think, from Jim Knowles. 17 in total were lost to the NFL. From a scheduling perspective, they do get Penn State and Texas at home. Those are obviously losable games, but they'll probably be small favorite. They are a small favorite in week 1. Should be maybe a tiny favorite against Penn State. We'll see how those teams start. A couple other losable games on the schedule. We know at Michigan, are they finally going to beat Michigan? It's getting to be a while. At Washington could be tricky. And then at Illinois, a very experienced team who we'll talk about. Minus 300 to make the playoff. 10.5 win total. I mean, this team's like close to 100th in returning production. So it's a lot of questions, starting with the quarterback. What are you seeing here with Ohio State?
A lot of questions, both sides of the ball. I'll try to touch on things that you didn't, because you got a lot of it. And there's just, I mean, the reason why this intro for Ohio State is so long for a national championship team, you would think that there wouldn't be that many questions, but there is a ton of questions. First off, who's going to be the quarterback? And that might dictate what style we're going to get. You guys have to remember, like, Chip Kelly was running this heavy rush offense with Travion Henderson, and a dual back set that was just pounding the ball. And then all of a sudden they get to the playoff against Tennessee and they say, no, we're going to open it wide open. We're just going to start throwing on first down. So what offense is Hartline going to call here? Now, Hartline's been there forever. Does he have the creativity of Chip Kelly? Does he have the playbook? Probably. But which playbook are we talking about? Are we talking about the zone read, or are we going to talk about opening up the offense to Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, and Max Clark, the tight end? And which quarterback is best for that? Because if you're going to go with a Will Howard type, you're probably going to get Keinholz. If you're going to go with a pure arm, you're going to go with Julian Sayin, who's not getting really great reviews here into the first couple of days of camp. So there's so many things offensively that we're talking about. One thing I do like is getting C.J. Donaldson. If they're going to go heavy run, getting C.J. Donaldson from West Virginia, if he can stay healthy, that's just an absolute basher in your backfield. Not impressed with James Peoples' numbers whatsoever. Limited in action, just 3 yards after first contact. So I think Donaldson's going to have to be healthy the entire year for the run game to go, but you can always fall back on that passing game. You mentioned the offensive line. You're going to hear a lot about this from me because there are so many transfers in college football in the offensive line in the trenches. And I think what you have to do is go in and look at their grade. And when you talk about left tackle, the new blindside tackle, Ethan Onianwa, he allowed 1 sack and 9 pressures at Rice last year. But when I dumped out all of the tackles on PFF, he graded as the 170th best tackle in 2024. That's not great and not what I would expect from an offensive line at Ohio State. So, yeah, there's tons of questions here from coordinator down to player.
He's got tools. Plus, he was playing at Rice, keep in mind. I mean,
yeah. And what's your competition? What kind of edges are you facing? You go to the other side of the ball. I'm not going to harp on the Patricia thing because this is now 2 podcasts that you and I have cut where we don't. I think Patricia's going to cost them a game, period. I'll just get that out there that I think his play calling and his defensive schemes are going to get them in trouble, and they're going to lose a game where they shouldn't. Now, the defensive line has the most question marks. Is it as potent as last year? I doubt it. Caleb Downs, you and I are talking about his position. Remember, he was the single high safety. And then in the playoff, they said, forget that. He's going to roam the box from A to C gap. And if it wasn't for that, and he is not the one that tackles Contravian Wisner on the toss against Texas, it could be Texas in the national title game. So where is Caleb Downs line up? That's such a big question. Sonny Styles, outside linebacker, may be the best in the Big Ten at his position. He did have, I know he's getting a lot of love. He had a 19% missed tackle rate last year. That's large. So to me, the Patricia's defense, the style, where are you putting Caleb Downs? Is he a free safety or is he roaming? There's a lot going on here. We're portaling in edges from North Carolina. We've got 2 sophomore defensive tackles with little experience, maybe not the size that we're used to at Ohio State. Let's just think about this. I mean, let's just logically think about this, Stuck. In a game of Jim Knowles and Chip Kelly versus Matt Patricia and Brian Hartline, what do you think the power rating of Ohio State should drop? Because literally I dock them 2 points just for that, just on coordinators. I almost don't dock you more than a point for your coordinator moves. But to me, it's so big because they won the national championship. I've said this a million times, not because of $20 million in NIL. They won the national championship because they had 2 coordinators that completely scrapped the chalkboard and rewrote the entire offense and defense before they played Tennessee in the playoff. These 2 coordinators can do that. You're right. It's a tougher road slate. I mean, back-to-back travel to Wisconsin. We'll see how effective they are with the run. Illy, Whiskey, Michigan, all on the road. Rutgers off of a bye on November 22nd is right before Michigan. I mean, I know the spread's going to be like 19, but still, that's not a good spot. So I've got problems with this team. Under 10.5. I know it's a juice to minus 140. If you want to go and maybe think that you want to take a playoff, no. Remember, we've seen the standard. 10-2 Ohio State's going to get in.
So you're doing Ohio State no playoff again?
I'm not doing that. I almost got there last year. I almost got that plus 450 almost got to the window last year. They were playing with their food all season. I'm not going to go that far. I think under 10.5 minus 140 is the bet.
I don't mind the under. I don't mind the no playoff this year.
But it's plus 250 though. It's not 450 like it was last year.
Yeah, it's under nothing for me. I project them at like 9.95. So
9.6 for me. Yeah,
not a ton of value, but it's under nothing. This team is like I could see. This is like a 10-2 team to me. That's what I project.
That's their ceiling. In my opinion, that's their ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, I think if they get like Texas early at home, if they lose that game, I think they're going. Their ceiling is 10.
Did you play in on that game yet? Did you see me fly one in on the app there?
Would you play?
Should I blow it already? Like it's in the app. I didn't play Ohio State.
Pick up the app. I kind of like Texas there.
I think the threes. I think okay. Then let's just get it out there. I played Texas plus 3. There was a 3.
Are the 3 still out there?
There were 3 threes still out there.
Are they still out there right now?
Here we go. Already. Give me a half second.
All right. Well, while you're looking at that, let's move on. Just talked about Jim Knowles. Well, Jim Knowles left Columbus, headed east to Happy Valley, and is now the defensive coordinator for Penn State after Tom Allen left for Clemson. I think moves were positive for both teams, for both Clemson and Penn State. Penn State is, to me, they're the number 1 team in the country going into the season. I just mentioned that all these top teams have tons of questions at quarterback. Well, that's not the case with Penn State. Drew Aller is back. Now, there's still some questions with Aller, right? He's got to be better versus the best team, specifically under pressure. He just leaves a lot to be desired. Some of that comes down to footwork, and but as far as like, hey, top team with their quarterback back, a team that last year won a program record 13 games, only lost to number 1, 2, and 3 in the country. They are my number one team going into the country. I think they should be favored to win the Big Ten. When you look, Singleton and Allen back, probably the best backfield in the country. Wide receiver room, you lose your top 3 in Wallace, Fleming, and Evans, but who really cares? I mean, did they not have a catch against Notre Dame? Right. You add Pena, Hudson, and Ross. I like the additions. We'll see how they fit with the offense, but I think they upgraded there. Tight end, you lose Warren, but this is tight end you. I mean, what do they got? 5 starting tight ends in the NFL right now? Obviously, there's going to be a drop-off from Warren, but Dinkins looks like the next freak. You have Reynolds there, too. Offensive line, you lose Wormley to the Jags, but he'll probably be replaced by Cousins. But everyone else is back. I mean, you got 2 of your right tackles back because of injury, so we'll see how that position shakes out. The offensive line wasn't great last year, so we'll see if they can take a leap with another year of experience. But this offense should be good, mainly because Kotelnicki's back. Year 2 of Kotelnicki, get another full offseason to install his offense. The familiarity is there with the offensive line, the backs, Aller. So this offense is going to be really good. Defense, I'm worried about the depth in certain positions, like wide receiver, and then a couple positions on the defense. So like injuries will be something to watch. But they do lose Abdul Carter, not going to be able to replace him. You lose Thomas as well and Vanover. Cares there. But Durant, Dennis Sutton, Ford, Fisher back from injury. You add a couple guys in the portal. At linebacker, you lose King to the NFL, but Rojas is back. You add Campbell from UNC. I think that was a really good get. He's really good against the run. Rojas is really great in coverage, so it's a pretty good linebacker pairing with DeLuca, giving you some depth. By the way, linebacker coach Dan Connor, I scrimmaged against him in 8th grade. I played fullback, middle linebacker my whole life. He played fullback, middle linebacker. Probably one of the greatest high school football linebackers, one of the greatest linebackers in high school history. I was never more embarrassed. I never, in my whole life playing football, wanted to just a scrimmage to be over. That was humiliating. Every play I went against him because I was fullback, middle linebacker. He was fullback, middle linebacker. He absolutely destroyed me every single play on both sides of the ball. One of the longest hour and a halves of my life. So shout out Dan Connor, who's Strathaven legend. Defensive back, you lose Kimber to the Titans, Reed to the Texans, Winston to the Titans, but he was hurt last year. There's some questions in the secondary. Can Lane step up and be that guy at safety? We'll see. But the defense is going to be really good. But they did lose some talent on this defense, and there's some depth questions. But this is the best team in the country. I'm not going to nitpick too much. When you look at the schedule, they have what I really like about this schedule. So they host Oregon after a bye, and they go to Ohio State after a bye. Right, those are their 2 hardest games on the schedule. The Iowa spot could be tricky. We'll talk about Iowa depending on how good Gronowski is. That's before the Ohio State game, but there's a bye in between there. The rest of the schedule is pretty manageable. I'm lower on Oregon. I'm lower than the market on Ohio State. And the reason I think those buys are so valuable, you got Kotelnicki and Knowles, the best coordinator pairing in college football, in my opinion. And you have Knowles, who knows this Ohio State personnel. Like, I think that's a huge advantage there. So I project this team. They're over unders 10.5. They're plus, the best you could find is plus 240 to win the conference. I don't mind that. They're minus 270 to make the playoff. I don't mind that. I think the floor for this team is 10 wins. It's barring like complete injury because there are some depth concerns. But I project like 10-6-5. So I show value in the over. It's over or nothing. They're my pick to win the Big Ten. Spoiler alert. There's not much really to nitpick here. Aller's just got to take that. It's just Franklin. Look, a lot of coaches get flack for that. You can't win the big one. And Franklin, and then they end up doing it. Not everyone can always win it. But Franklin and Aller, they do deserve some criticism. Aller in big games, and Franklin's decision-making in big games sometimes can be questionable. But he has the coordinators. He has the roster. Like, if you're going to do it, this is the year to do it. What do you see with Penn State?
My win total is not as high as yours, but my expectations may be higher than yours, if that makes sense. Sometimes you pull away from the math and you take a look at what you have and you say, holy shit, not only is this the best team on paper in the entire country, the schedule lines up so nice. And I will mention that Oregon game. I'll say this when we get to Oregon. Penn State can do something that Oregon will not be able to defend. And I'll just save that for when we start talking about the Ducks. But that is a really bad spot for Oregon at the beginning. When you look at this, most loaded roster in James Franklin's history, not even close, with his returning quarterback, running backs, offensive line, beefing up the wide receiver room. You mentioned Kyron Hudson, who's a freak. I think he had the catch of the year last year for USC. Trevor Pena coming in from Syracuse. But Devontae Ross, like 2.8 yards per route run for Troy. I mean, this is sick. It's just an embarrassment of riches for the professor that is Andy Kotelnicki. Now, the question is on offense, is James Franklin going to go hands off? Because he needs to. He needs to let Kotelnicki call the whole offense. On the other side of the ball, Franklin, are you really going to get in the way of Jim Knowles? I want crusty Jim Knowles with a cup of coffee, post-game interview, doing the thing where he, he looks like he hasn't shaved in a few days, been a long week of practice. Jim Knowles is the biggest acquisition that Penn State has had in years. And you're right, there is a little bit of a talent drop-off, but I think that there's enough from a recruiting standpoint and maybe from the portal standpoint that by the end of the year, we may not be saying that. Edge, Danny Dennis Sutton, one-man havoc crew. Zane Durant had 8 tackles for loss as a defensive tackle. I mean, it's hard to get a tackle for loss as a defensive tackle. He had 8 of them. If there's a weakness, it's maybe Zion Tracy. He's a nickelback. That's a critical piece of Jim Knowles' defense. Everywhere Jim Knowles has been, it's always about the nickelback, the bullet position, who is going to play that. Zion Tracy in 390 snaps had a missed tackle rate of 39%. So I would, if there's a weakness, I think that's it, because that is such a critical piece to Jim Knowles' defense. We'll see. I still have, issues with Drew Aller picking up pre-snap blitz. I still have issues with Drew Aller not wanting to throw the ball away. I think that's all going to work itself out. This is the easiest non-conference in FBS. I mean, Nevada, FIU, Villanova. I mean, if you're not covering,
they don't buy. I mean, they don't have to show anything.
Yeah, not a single thing. And then Dan Lanning comes to town, and Dan Lanning's going to have a big old bag of tricks, and Penn State wouldn't have shown anything by then.
That's a tough spot for Oregon.
Oh, it's a really tough spot. And then Indiana comes in. Signetti comes in on back-to-back travel. You get your bye week for Ohio State. They get one too. I would take Penn State's coordinators over Ohio State's coordinators. I'll state that again for like the third time. I'm not really worried. Michigan State, Nebraska come in off buys in November. I think at that point we're cruising from 14 to 21 point favorites at that. And we're really looking at the playoff. I can't see a way where Penn State is not making the playoff. But I think if there's a bet to make here, I'm not saying they're going to win it. The national championship is still laying out there around 8-1. Now it's 7-1 almost across nationally. It's 8-1. I don't know how this team doesn't get a bye with this schedule, with this amount of returning talent. I don't see them falling past 10-2, and I don't see them falling past 11-1. There is so much talent here that if Franklin will just simply allow his coordinators to do their jobs, I think their floor is 10-2. I think their ceiling is undefeated. If they get past Ohio State for once. But what you do with that national championship bet at 8-1 is you don't touch it till the semifinals, and even then maybe you don't consider it. I don't see anybody power rated that would get them more than a field goal favorite against this team if it plays out like it should. I think you're grabbing that 8-1 or the 7-1 out there, wherever shop you're at, and you're just tucking that away until you get to the semifinals of the college football playoff. That's how good this team is.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say with the national title good is like that by the end of it, like I have Penn State power rated 1, but they're like they don't have a lot of room to go up much more than where I have them power rated, right? Like this is a known commodity for the most part, right? Like Aller could take the next step. The receivers could be better than expected. And then they're always recruiting well. They could have some young guys step up. But they're kind of close to their ceiling. There was so much uncertainty at the quarterback position among the other top teams. There could be some big risers, right? That we just don't know because there's a lot of uncertainty. So like there could be teams that catch up to them or surpass them by the end of the season. So there's not as much uncertainty with Penn State. But yeah, depending on how Oregon, we're going to talk about Oregon right now. Depending on how Oregon goes, there's like a chance that Penn State could be like -10 at home. I don't necessarily think it'll be, but like if Oregon is a mess early, now granted, like say they lose at Northwestern or something, but they'll probably be I don't know what's Penn State against Oregon, 7.5, 7. What's market ratings?
I think market is 5.5, but I'll look at
5.5.
Yeah.
I mean, I have them higher, but I'm much lower on Oregon. But other than that, so we're going to say Oregon, they're close to a touchdown favorite. Ohio State, I have close to a coin flip as of right now. Obviously, with the Ohio State uncertainty at quarterback, that could change. But all the other games, they should be double-digit favorites. And with one thing, with Franklin, that you got to give him credit for, he doesn't lose the games that he's supposed to win. And they should be double-digit favorites. Obviously, things can change, but as of right now, in the rest of their games. By the way, quick heads up to anybody playing fantasy football this season. The ultimate 2025 draft kit is here, courtesy of our Fantasy Labs team. That means our guys Sean Kerner and Chris Raybon have their rankings, tiers, and cheat sheets ready for you. But first, to get them, you'll need a Fantasy Labs subscription. And right now, new subscribers can use code FLEX20 for $20 off at fantasylabs.com/flex. Let Sean and Chris, two of the best in the business, make your fantasy prep easier. Use code FLEX20 for $20 off at fantasylabs.com/flex. I'm sure those guys will be ranked top 5 of all projectors once again this year. So make sure you check them out at Fantasy Labs. All right, let's move on to Oregon. Went undefeated last year and got bit by the old seeding system. Lanning should have lost to Penn State, the Big 10 championship, buddy. They come in, win total 10.5. Under's taking a ton of money, which I agree with. Under 10.5, I think like the best you can find out there is under 10.5 minus 158. You can also go under 10 even money with circa. A lot of questions on this team. They don't return a ton. You lose Gabriel to the NFL. You lose James, your running back, to the NFL. You lose Holden, Johnson, receivers to the NFL. Stewart, who you were going to rely on, is injured, probably out for the year. Your tight end, you lost to the NFL. Your offensive line, you lose your right tackle to the NFL, your left tackle to the NFL. Both of your guards, although they were pretty underwhelming last year. Your center is back and is solid. You're going to rely on a Nevada transfer who has all the tools. He could be a first-round draft pick. At left tackle. Left guard, USC transfer, who I'm not overly wowed with. Right guard, there's going to be a battle between Bedford, who was injured last year, and Yulee. Right tackle, Texas State transfer, or maybe Wilson wins the job. But there's some questions on the offensive line. Defensive line, you lose Harmon, Birch, and Caldwell to the NFL. The depth is young and unproven. You got Ukulele back. You need Washington to step up. You had Bear Alexander from USC. Like, he's just the definition of, like, he sounds way better than it's going to end up working. Like, yeah, it looks great. He has it, but it's just.
Well, is he motivated, right? Who? Yeah. I can't put that in a spreadsheet. Is Bear Alexander motivated?
Yeah. Linebacker, you lose Bassett to the NFL and Jacobs. You do have one, your stud back, and Bocher. And you need someone to emerge at the jack position, but the linebackers should be okay. Defensive backfield, you lose Johnson to the Bears, Muhammad to the Jags. Reed, you lost, I think, 3 or 4 to the NFL. Can the young kids, they're just going to need guys to step up. There's a lot of young, they're recruiting really well. I mean, they're top 5 recruiting in portal. Like, they just have a lot of unproven or guys at lower levels. There's just a lot of moving pieces here for an offense that lost a quarterback with a ton of experience, 1,000-yard back, your top 4 receivers, 4 starting offensive linemen, 2 to the NFL. Basically, your whole entire offense is new except your center, who's good, but the rest of the offense is new. The defensive backfield, you had Johnson, a corner from Northwestern, who's pretty good. Thieneman from Purdue, their safety, he's really good. He's going to be a pro. I like him a lot. You get Florence back from injury at corner. There's some youth in the mix as well, all over the place. So we'll see how it all works out. But there's 15 ultimately from last year's team that are in the NFL. The biggest question is that quarterback. And I think that's where we're going to see the biggest drop-off, because I don't think it can be understated. Like, you go from Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel, both in the NFL, but they were both, 5th-year seniors, to now a brand new starter. You have Dante Moore. How many pick sixes is he going to throw? If you bet on Oregon, I don't know. But
we should set an over-under on this show before the season starts.
I'm not a Dante Moore guy.
I know.
So never have been. Maybe he proves me wrong, but maybe like Novosad is in the mix. Moga. We'll see how it all plays out. I could see Dante Moore. I think he's going to win the job to start, but he could lose the job for sure. So there's a lot of questions here with this team. From a scheduling perspective, you avoid Ohio State and Michigan. Your hardest game, other than Penn State, which I think is a loss in a tough spot. They do have a good runway of like 4 weeks: Montana State, Oklahoma State, at Northwestern, Oregon State, to like figure things out with the quarterback and get some of these new pieces assimilated, which is a good thing. But their other hardest games, it's like at Iowa, you are coming off of a bye there at least. USC at home, travel across the country for Rutgers, at Washington at the end of the year. So there's some tricky scheduling spots. 4 of the 6 teams you play in the middle of the year are coming off of byes. I don't know. There's a lot of questions here. I do think that you're going to look. Sadiq, their tight end, is a freak. They added Johnson from Louisville. You have another one of your depth tight ends back. You might see. I think you're going to see more 12 and 13 personnel. I think you're going to see them rely on, their backs. I mean, we didn't even mention Mekhi Hughes, who I think is awesome. Whittington's back from injury, so I think they're going to have to rely more on a running game. I think I like their tight ends, so I think you might see more 12 and 13 personnel. But there's a lot of unknown here with Oregon, similar to Ohio State, starting at the top with quarterback. What are you saying with the Ducks?
Make the win total 9.6.
I'm 9.53, so it's under.
So it's under, but I think I definitely think there's things that we need to discuss, because I think there's spots on the schedule you might want to avoid, and there might be some game of the years you want to get in on. Now, if you're new to the BBOC podcast, 2 years ago, Dante Moore hit the scene in UCLA. I freaked out. I thought he was the greatest thing ever. And then this kid went on to throw some of the most embarrassing interceptions I've ever seen in my entire life. Here we are, full circle. He's been in the system for a year now. He'll be, he needs to limit his turnover-worthy plays. 14 to 12 big-time throw to turnover-worthy play rate. When you see Dante Moore thread it, it's beautiful. And then sometimes he'll just get back and throw it directly to a defender, and I'm not sure what he's looking at. Just mind-boggling interceptions. This is Evan Stewart's second year in the program after transferring in. He had a drop in yards per route run last year, but I think the reason he went from 2.1 yards per route run to 1.6 is the nature of Will Stein's offense, right? The offensive coordinator, I think this is his third year there, coming in from UTSA. The nature of the Oregon Ducks offense is to limit the mistakes by the quarterback, which is why Dylan Gabriel and Bo Nix had an average depth of target of like 6 yards, right? This is not a bombing offense, and it never has been. I think that might be the saving grace for Dante Moore, is that he's not going to be expected to throw anything deep ever, which could build his confidence. And I think that's really kind of why you see a drop in the yards per route run in Evan Stewart. Malik Benson portals in after some time at FSU and Alabama. We'll see how that works out. But the word on the street about this Decorian Moore kid, this number one,
he's free.
Have you seen his track video? This kid I don't know why he's not in the 2028 Olympics for long jump. I went and watched this kid's track video. If you don't know the name Decorian Moore, you're going to know it real soon. I don't know who's going to be able to.
Yeah, we're kind of talking low in Oregon, but are they recruiting and portaling in Ohio? They have dudes.
They on offense, they have dudes. His recruiting profile says sudden explosion from a dead stop. I'm excited to see this kid go. The offensive line has 4 guys transferred in, one starter. It comes to 120 starts, which is really great, but not together and not in this system and not with the zone.
And not Power 4.
And not Power 4.
State, Nevada.
Right. So it's one of those things where I have to dip in and look at the grades and there's a competition they went up against. And when you go on the defensive side of the ball, we were talking about Uiagalelei, the young concrete. He'll be at edge. He's going to be an edge in the NFL. 9.5 sacks are going to return to this defense. And then edge Tuioti brings back 5.5 sacks on the other side. So it's the same Oregon defense that we've come to expect all these years, which is heavy pressure off the edge during passing downs. But my question is the same thing with Oregon every year. Where is the run defenders? They're fierce pass rushers. They portaled in their secondary. That's probably going to execute, and they're going to tackle well in space. But the rush defense over the middle is a huge question. I don't believe in Bear Alexander. It's his third team in 4 years. Defensive tackle Amari Washington, he's had 12 tackles in his last 22 games. His 22 games career, he's had 12 tackles. I think they're undersized at defensive tackle, and don't know Bear Alexander's will to want to play. Will he play the whole season? Has he been paid his NIL already? Does he plan to contribute here? If you go and look at the schedule, here's the problem that I have with Oregon, is that you are soft in the middle against the run game, against teams that run zone read. Go and look at the schedule. Who are the teams that run power zone read? Penn State, Minnesota, USC is going to run it, and Demon Williams at Washington and Coleman. There are so many teams that are going to be able to run inside zone against this inside interior Oregon defense. I think we should keep an eye on the kickoff time, October 18th against Rutgers. That could be an 11 a.m. Eastern, a noon Eastern game, 11 a.m. God's country. Dan Lanning didn't have a problem going east last year. 35-0 beat Purdue, went to Michigan, and then, purposely was, running plays at the end to wave at all the fans walking out. So I'm not saying East Coast travel is a big thing, but I would look at that game time against Rutgers. I think the one thing about Penn State, that game that you and I are talking about, Penn State's not going to show anything. And Jim Knowles went against Will Stein twice last year. So, if anybody's going to be well prepared to take on Oregon, not only with a bye week, but also seeing this offense last year twice, I think it's going to be Penn State in the defense. So I'm under on Oregon all the way, under 10.5, minus 140 was the best that I could find out there. Really not high on the interior. I think Dante Moore's going to be okay just because of the nature of the offense, and Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel, average depth of target 6 yards. Just get it out to DeCorian. Let him make some hay out there. The defense is where I'm worried, especially the interior of the run D.
Yeah, Betcher, is a really good player, that linebacker, good run defender, but there's a lot of other questions, and so under for me also in Oregon. Let's talk a little Michigan Wolverines. They're 9-1 to win the conference is the best you could find out there. Around plus 200 to make the college football playoff. Win total, what do we got out there? Under 9.5, minus 170 at FanDuel is the best I think out there. Mm-hmm. If you want to go under, I project. That's like their win total is kind of like the implied win total, like, depending on where you look, is as of right now is like 8, 9. I project them at 8.5. Now there's some upside here with Bryce Underwood, who I think is going to win the job. Mikey Keene is also in the mix, the veteran from Fresno State. He's dealt with some injuries, but Underwood is obviously the highly prized recruit with a ton of potential. He's got all of the tools. It's just a matter of how long is it going to take him to adjust to the college game. Now, a lot of these teams we're mentioning, we just mentioned Oregon and Ohio State, who have quarterback questions. They're replacing pros. Michigan is not. Michigan, this team, Bryce Underwood, even if he's bad, is probably going to be better than what they had last year at the bare minimum. Last year they only averaged 129 passing yards per game. They had no 40-plus yard completions. They had more interceptions than touchdown, dead last in explosive passing. So there's a lot higher ceiling at quarterback, obviously. But as far as talking Michigan playoff, Big 10, it's going to come down to, can Underwood hit his potential? Now, the pieces around him, are they there? I'm not sure. By the way, going back to Oregon, I think Oregon's just one year away. Oregon might be really dangerous if they find their quarterback next year. But back to Michigan, like, they lose Mullings and Edwards to the NFL, but it's Marshall time. You had Haynes from Alabama. The running backs are going to be good. Wide receiver, you lose Morris, but you bring to, I think, Indiana, and then McCauley came in from Indiana, who was hurt last year. You got Morgan and Moore, meh. Simpson from UMass, meh. Could Marsh contribute? We'll see. At tight end, you lose Loveland. That's huge. You have, Klein and Bredesen back, but that's a downgrade. Like, do they have the weapons? I don't really see it. They didn't really upgrade much unless some of the young kids are going to start contributing. And the loss of Loveland is massive. But this looks kind of similar to the group that was here last year. Offensive line, you lost 2 to the NFL. Yeah. Your left side of the offensive line, Hinton and Preby. Your projected starters are probably Link. Maybe they have what is Babalola a 5-star? I don't know. Can he win a job on the offensive line? That's something to watch. But Link is going to be the left tackle. Not a fan. The interior is meh. Your right tackle is very inexperienced. Like, at right guard, there's like a Cal Poly and Ferris State transfers in the mix. I don't necessarily see it with the offensive line either. So a lot of questions on this offense. The defense is going to be good. We do know that. Now, although they lose 3 on the defensive line of the NFL and Grant, Stewart, and Graham, I don't think you just replace Grant and Graham, who were just so dominant. Now, they got Williams from Clemson, I think is overrated. They got Payne from Alabama. Okay. I mean, they got a ton of bodies. I mean, they got 11 listed at 300 plus. They'll rotate a lot. Benny, so the interior, I do have some questions, but there's a ton of bodies. At edge, you got Moore and Guy. They're studs. There's some good depth also behind them. Linebacker, really strong with Hausman and Barham. Defensive back, you lost Johnson to the NFL corner, but he was hurt most of last year. Hill and Berry are back. I'm not the biggest Berry fan. So we'll see that. And Metcalf from Arkansas, maybe get some time in nickel or safety. We'll see how they use him. At safety, they lost Page to the Giants and Johnson. Need Hillman and Curtis probably to step up here. Who's the who am I thinking of that is to watch for an injury at safety? Moore, I think. Why am I still
Rod
Moore. Is he healthy? I don't know. When is he going to be ready to go? That's something to watch at safety. Their special team should be elite because they have a really reliable kicker. New offensive coordinator Chip Lindsey. He wants to get them more explosive. It's going to be like a power spread. You're probably going to see more 11 personnel this year. From a scheduling perspective, they avoid Penn State and Oregon, and they host Ohio State at the end of the year. They have the easiest Big Ten schedule for some numbers. But there's some tricky road games here. You got Oklahoma, Nebraska, USC, Michigan State rivalry game. That's not going to be easy. And then we'll see if Maryland has quit or what Maryland has in the tank. But that's, game 11, second straight road game before Ohio State. Tricky spot potentially. But pretty easy schedule, all things considered. I think outside the top 50 in strength of schedule. So won the lottery here. A lot of it's going to come down to what Underwood can do, but I'm not sure he just has it's not an ideal situation for a very young quarterback. D's going to be good. Special teams is going to be good, but I have a lot of questions about the offensive line, the weapons on the outside, and then obviously how fast Underwood can get up to speed. What are you seeing on Michigan?
I see a beautiful schedule. A beautiful schedule of the easiest thing you could pull in the Big Ten. I think, Chip Lindsey comes in, the title is offensive coordinator, but, really he's a quarterback coach. I still think they're going to run the Harbaugh as much as they can with Justice Haynes, who's transferred in from Alabama. Highly touted Jordan Marshall comes in. They're going to lead the backfield with Bryce Underwood. I think they're going to have some sort of offensive identity on the ground. And I think Chip Lindsey's really there to kind of be a caretaker for Bryce Underwood and get him to find his next level in his freshman year. I mean, cutting down on turnover-worthy plays for freshmen is a task in college football. So we'll see what he can do when he comes under pressure, because I think he will be under pressure. You mentioned that offensive line, so many questions. The right side scares the shit out of me. I expect if they're running inside-outside zone, it's going to be to the left side where you don't like Link anyways, but on the right side, we're talking Nathan Afobe, his inexperience. We're talking about a redshirt freshman and Andrew Sperrig at right tackle. They have the bodies. They're all at least 6'4". They're all about 310 or more. Do they have the footwork? And if not, do you have a second string that can get behind them? So that's really a big question. The defense, I'm not as worried about them as you are. I mean, they returned their top two tacklers, linebacker Ernest Hausman.
No, I'm not worried about the defense. There's some questions, but I do think that there is some drop off in the interior.
Yeah, I would agree on that. I mean, the edges are still going to be havoc minded. And the corners
still going to be really good.
Yeah, and the corners are combining for 17 PBUs with Zeke Berry and Jair Hill. So there's certain parts of the defense I'm not really worried about. And I don't even care if they take a loss against Oklahoma. I think the way that you handicap them is what I said earlier. I mean, it's the easiest Big Ten schedule in the conference. So let's focus on that. Let's throw that Oklahoma game out. I'm going to save Oklahoma for the SEC pod, but I expect Oklahoma to win that game. So I focus on the Big Ten schedule. 5 Big Ten road trips includes Nebraska, USC, Michigan State, Northwestern, and Maryland. I mean, we're talking about 4 games in a row from a stretch of October 25th to November 22nd, where Michigan should be a 20-point favorite. That's impressive. You just don't get that in your own conference unless you're like Alabama and you got Vandy or whatever. Not Vandy anymore. I project 3 TD faves leading up to Ohio State. That means that they should be.
And Northwestern's in Wrigley, for what it's worth.
Yeah, and Michigan's off a bye, so we'll see, if they're ready to do that. But I think by then, hopefully, we've identified a couple of defensive tackles that can handle what's going to be South Dakota State East for an offense for Northwestern. We'll see if they can handle that. So, listen, again, this is the easiest Big Ten schedule. I think the Oklahoma game is going to be against one of the toughest defenses on their schedule. I think it only benefits them to play in conference play. I don't see 2 losses on this conference schedule. And if you can pick them out, maybe Washington can be testy with Demon. USC is kind of a tricky trip. USC is off of a bye. That it could be that one. I still see Michigan as a 6-point favorite there. But I think 8-1, 7-2 is a floor. I think 8-1 is completely the potential here for Michigan in this conference schedule. I think their identity is going to get better week by week by week, and I think Oklahoma is going to teach them a lot of lessons. That number I spoke about, 4-1 to make the Big Ten championship game, is now down to plus 380. I like Michigan plus 380 to make the game, to make the championship game, just the Big Ten championship. I'm not saying they're going to win the Big Ten, I'm just saying to make it. The schedule is conducive and perfect for it, and it's going to allow them to be battle-tested against Oklahoma and be ready for what is one of the softest schedules we will talk about in all of Power 4.
I can't get there. I think this is I think they're going to end up being an 8-4 team. If I'm Michigan,
what are they going to be in conference? What are they going to be in conference?
They could lose at Nebraska, at USC, and Ohio State. They're going to be dogs against Ohio State. They could lose at Nebraska, at USC. They also, I think, probably going to lose at Oklahoma. And then, at Michigan State, depending on how they are, it's a rivalry game on the road. It might not be easy, especially if Underwood struggles. I can't get there. I will say, I do think that there could be chaos in the Big Ten more than usual because Oregon and Ohio State, with their uncertainty at quarterback in the rosters, there could be someone else sneaking in to play Penn State. I personally just don't think it's Michigan. I think they're a year away.
Wink, we had we didn't think Wink Martindale would be, good as what we've had from the former Ravens assistants that have been defensive coordinator there. They finished number 1 in pass rush. They were 13th in limiting big plays. They were 26th in havoc. It wasn't that big of a drop. Coverage took a little bit of a hit, but the Michigan defense overall didn't really have that much of a drop going to Wink Martindale.
No, their defense was dominant, but I just don't know if they solved their offensive issues to get there. So we'll see. I can't get there with you, but I do. My prediction is that, we'll save our predictions for part 2 at the end. Let's move on to Illinois. Illinois is your boy Burt, 40-1. I think you can find out there to win the conference. 6-1 to make the playoff. Win total you can find under 8.5, minus 190, or under 7.5 plus 140. Man, I was all ready to go under, but the under has been taking money. By the way, Michigan, I project 8.5, small lean to the under, but I don't know. I probably won't get there. But Illinois, I project them, their implied win totals, depending on where you look, sitting around 8. I project them 7-7, but I'm out on this team. A lot of people have them as a sleeper. I get it. They're one of the 5 most experienced teams in the country, 17 returning starters, top 10 returning production on offense and defense. There's a lot to like just on the surface. You have your quarterback back, so you have that quarterback certainty. Altmaier, 21 touchdowns, 5 interceptions last year, although 19 big-time throws, 14 turnover-worthy plays. The depth is questionable if Altmaier goes down, although I'm not the biggest Altmaier guy, but Hampton from Northern Illinois is their backup. Running back, you lose McCray to Georgia, but you still have a lot of guys there. Lawfery, Fagan are back, Valentine. Wide receiver is what I'm really worried about because you lost Bryant, who had 3 game winners last year. He went to the NFL. You lost Franklin, who's now on an NFL roster. You had Clement at West Virginia. He's solid, but definitely a drop-off from Bryant and Franklin. You had Bowick. I like his upside, the Ball State guy. We'll see if he can continue his trajectory from the end of last year. They're going to need some of their young guys to step up, or LZ, Dixon, BD. We'll see who emerges. Your tight ends are back. You got all 5 on the offensive line back. I think they're a bit overrated. Maybe this is like an Oklahoma State situation. Oh, look, everyone's back. But I will say, Bielema's offensive line. And they got all 5 back. Davis is kind of the bell cow at left tackle. Defensively, there's going to be, you lose Briggs, you lose Edwards to the NFL, Coleman to the NFL. A lot of people are talking about they brought in DeRozier from Florida State, 2 Wisconsin starters, Thompson and Neal. I'm not DeRozier guy. I think Neal stinks. Thompson, I think, is pretty good if he's healthy. So the defensive line leaves a lot to be desired for me. Linebacker, you get Rosiak back from injury. Kreutz is back. Akis also, Bryant. So there's good depth here too. Defensive backfield, I think that's the strength of the team. You have Cox, Patterson, the Scotts, Bailey, who really came on late, they're all back. This is a strong secondary for sure. So there's a lot to like about this team. Where you look where they lost, because they just returned so much. They lost receivers, nose tackle, DN to the NFL. So that's, and I do think the offensive line is a bit overrated. But why am I selling this team then? It sounds like everything you should like. I mean, first of all, they went 5-1 in one possession games. Yep. They were trailing in the fourth in 5 of their 9 FBS wins. They got go back to the Rutgers game. You got a Hail Mary walk off. Everything just went right. By the way, so did injuries. Everything went right on the injury front. I mean, besides running back, that's where they have depth. They had no injuries outside of running back. Their whole offensive line started. Altmaier started. So I wouldn't be surprised if they have to deal with a little bit more injuries this year on the offensive side of the ball. Look, the 8 teams they beat last year had a 42-66 record. This is a team that hasn't won 8+ games in back-to-back seasons since 1990. 7 games in a row to start the season. That's not easy before you have a bye. Ohio State being the 7th at home. They do avoid Penn State, Michigan, Oregon, and host Ohio State. That's another thing to like. They only play 1 team off of a bye in Purdue. You have 5 Big 10 home games. You face 10 new quarterbacks. It's a lot of uncertainty there. That's the second most in the country. One of the trickier spots that I'll point out is at Purdue, who's off of a bye. That's before the Ohio State and after the USC game. Purdue almost beat them last year. Lost in overtime. We'll see. Who knows what Purdue's going to be.
And you don't think Barry Odom doesn't know Brett Bielema?
Yep. At Duke, at Iowa, and at Indiana early in the season of the first month. Those are the tone setters for this team, and probably decide the win total. I lean under. It's gotten a little bit too expensive, so I probably won't get there. But I don't see the upside with this team, even though they do bring a ton back. But I get why some people like them. What do you see with your boy Burt?
My boy Burt. I think odds makers came out and put this. I just could not believe the number was as high as it was when it came out. It really didn't leave any room. People were in love with them. I would say people that aren't in the gambling industry loved Illinois, and I'm like, well, they're properly priced. Like, odds makers did not leave any room to go and grab them. I get it. There's 5 returning starters on the offensive line for Luke Altmaier. I expect the same numbers from this offense in regards of pressure, in regards of Altmaier in general. I mean, they were 10th in offensive stuff rate, which means they could move the pile, but they were 103rd in havoc allowed. And that is a really bad aspect that Luke Altmaier struggled with. I don't think people realize that. You can go into his numbers when he faced elite secondaries that had edges that can create pressure. And I'm talking specifically in games against Oregon and Penn State last year. He had 1 big-time throw and 6 turnover-worthy plays.
He got away with some throws last year that should have ended in turnovers.
And now you're losing Bryant, you're losing your outside receivers, because what do we have coming back? We have Hank Beatty, 2.1 yards per route run. You have Colin Dixon, but both of those guys are slot guys. Neither of them are wideouts. I don't know who is lining up at wideout. So I have some questions about, is there a deep shot offense that's going to be ready to go here, right? What were they? They were 18th in passing EPA last year. So I'm a little bit questionable about where that comes from when your 2 returning receivers are in the slot. Are you just playing in a phone booth all season?
Yeah, Brian and Franklin were so good.
Yeah. Boy, Miss Franklin. They're returning on the defensive side. They're returning nearly every starter and a few that skipped the NFL draft. 8 sacks from defensive end Gabe Jacobs, 7 PBUs from Matthew Bailey out there. They finished 4th in PFF tackling, but these defensive numbers against the run were horrific. 127th in defensive rushing success rate, 132nd in defensive line yards. Has that changed with this defense that we're putting out there now? I mean, there's supposed to be more depth at the defensive tackle position, but I mean, Aaron Henry has to resolve the fact that you were nearly the worst in the nation in the interior defending the run. They were just bottom 10 in so many rush categories from a defensive standpoint. Nose tackle Angelo McCullum didn't produce much in the box scores through 7 games that he played in last year. So I'm not exactly sure, have you resolved your issues in defending the run? And teams are going to be able to control the clock. Now, there are 6 games on this schedule. I make Illinois a TD favorite or better. And Bielema has been really good as a road dog. Since he's been in Illinois for 4 years, he's 12-4 against the spread when he's been on the road as an underdog. That puts an upset or at least a cover in scope when they play Indiana on September 20th. So I do have my eye on that game. I think, Bielema is one of those ones that, trust me, he reads all the headlines, he listens to what everybody's saying, and he gets motivated when he starts being, bad-mouthed in the media or that his team can't win. But when it's expected of him, he can't get it done, especially against teams that can create pressure on Luke Altmaier and secondaries that can definitely create contested catches. So for that reason, I can't bet them to go over. I actually make them 8.3, but the number right now is 7.5 over minus 160. So if you do a little math here, configuration, we're right there where the number that I project. So I am looking at playing Illinois as an underdog on the road. That points me to Indiana. I can't find a game of the year out there. I expect him to underproduce against secondaries that are going to be able to defend, especially a wideout. Like if Luke Altmaier can't get it to wideouts, I don't know who they're going to be, and there's a secondary that can shut that down, you've really limited this offense. Plus, if you have any kind of inside zone read, you're going to be able to take advantage of this defense all day, just like everyone did last year. They did nothing to resolve that issue. So I think Illinois is a week to week. It's a pass on a win total. I don't see them disrupting the Big Ten. But do look for Burt to pull off an upset against Cignetti, maybe.
All right, well, let's move on to Cignetti and the Indiana Hoosiers. Over, let's see, the best win total, if you want to go over on Indiana, over 8.5 plus 120. You can find out there. Best price to win the conference, 42-1, plus 600 to make the college football playoff. Look, I mean, this team, they were plus 15 in turnovers. They only lost one game in the regular season. They didn't really beat anyone. I know. They beat one team with a winning record. That was Michigan, and they couldn't really move the ball in the second half. Their wins came against teams that were combined 51 and 81. But you got to give them credit because they absolutely demolished those teams, and that matters. The schedule's going to get harder this year. They played, two teams with a winning record last year, projected to play 4 this year. They do avoid Michigan and Ohio State, but they go to Penn State, Iowa, and Oregon. So those are 3 really tough road games. The rest is pretty manageable. The other thing to note, late in the year, at Maryland, which is a tricky spot. That's before Penn State. Maryland's going off a bye, but Maryland could be dead with a fired coach by then. Wisconsin, late in the year. Wisconsin could be dead with a fired coach, depending on how their season goes. Purdue, last game of the year. Who knows what Purdue's going to look like or what their depth looks like. So that could be 3 dead teams late in the year. So there's a lot of winnable games on this schedule. I thought I was going to be betting the under after last year on Indiana, but I actually project them closer to 8.75. So I should.
I'm 9.1. I'm 9.1. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm 8. Let me see. 8.79. And the reason, look, Rourke is gone, their quarterback, but he's gone to the NFL, but he was hurt last year, playing hurt. Mendoza's in. I think Mendoza has a ton of potential. I don't think that there's much of a drop-off. The depth is questionable, though. If he gets hurt, that's something to keep in mind. It's not like last year where you have a more viable backup when Rourke did miss time.
Is Alberto Mendoza his brother?
Maybe. He might be the backup. Sure, he's out for the year. I don't know. Ellison, Lawton, Green are gone from the backfield, but Black is back. You had Hemby from Maryland, Beebe, who had a really good year at UAB. So I think the backfield's still good. Wide receiver, you lose Cross and Price, who went to the NFL, but your 2 leaders are back in Surratt and Williams. And then Cooper in the slot. You added Jackson and Brady. The wide receiver room's still good. You lose a tight end who I think went to the NFL somehow. I didn't see coming, but I think he's on the Lions roster. But you had Stays, who was previously at Notre Dame and Tennessee. You have Nowakowski back, who's a good blocker. Offensive line, you lose your center, who I think went to Barstool. And your right tackle, who is he with an NFL team? Wedig? I think so. Let's see. Yeah, Wedig's with the Rams. You lost your right tackle. So there are some questions on the offensive line. You added the center from Notre Dame and Coogan, right tackle from Ohio State, a guard from Colorado. Left guard, Evans, is he healthy and is he going to be ready to go? That's something I'm watching. Once he went out last year, it was a disaster. Stevens was a disaster in his place. So as long as they're not rolling with Stevens at guard, then I think that they should be okay, but I want to see how this comes together. The defensive line, I like what this team did in the portal. Because you lost Carr, you lost Carpenter and West. 2 of those guys went to the NFL, but Kamara, your star, is back. You added Wyatt from Maryland. I like that addition. Daly from Kent State. I thought he was their best player on defense. Wheeler from Western Kentucky, I've always liked. Ratcliffe from Texas State, I like. These are guys proven production. They fit right in the wheelhouse of Cignetti. I like their additions here on the defensive line. Linebacker, you lose Walker to the Raiders, but Fisher's back. I think Jones and Hardy are ready to step up at the other linebacker spot. the defensive backfield, Pons is back. You added Gandy and Knighton, two guys who I like. At safety, you do lose Asbury. I thought he was pretty underrated, but Farrell's back. You had Moore from Ole Miss. Is he eligible? I don't know. There's some eligibility questions there. Nickelback, you had Boykin. So I really like what they did in the portal. Like, I just love the type of guys that they're getting and able to get to fill some of the holes that they needed to. I think they nailed the portal. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I like this team. And Cignetti, he's going to have them showing up every week. So it's over or nothing for me. I can see the case as Indiana being the – it's not – is it a surprise again? I mean, from an odds perspective, it is if they win the Big Ten. It wouldn't shock me if they got back. Now, the problem is I don't know if they have that up to – like, they're at Penn State, at Oregon, at Iowa. That might prevent them from getting to the Big Ten title, but I do show value in the over. What are you seeing with the Hoosiers?
I show value in the over also as well. I haven't played it. I think I am by the time we get done talking about this. So Mike Shanahan stays on as OC. Tony Sinceri heads off to UCLA, but Shanahan's been with Cignetti through JMU. Fernando Mendoza, I did a little bit of a deep dive because, he showed up big on the radar last year after an upset that Cal had. His numbers from a TD to INT, you see 16-6. That's pretty good. But then you see 12 big time throws to 17 turnover worthy plays. That kind of tells you a different story. But when you dip into that, his accuracy was not an issue whatsoever. Cal finished 14th in on-target rate. Like, Mendoza is spot on with his accuracy, and his turnover-worthy play rate was exactly the same in a clean pocket as it was in a pressured pocket. So I have to ask if, like, these turnover-worthy plays are just, youth, just mistakes that have happened, because it wasn't pressure that caused them. And I think that will be improved when he gets out there with this coaching staff versus what he had at Cal. Maryland running back transfer Roman Hemby. There's just no numbers here that flash or jump off the page. Wideout Omar Cooper and slot Elijah Surratt bring back 15 receiving TDs, so that's there for Mendoza. And I do like the addition of Pat Coogan from Notre Dame, the center. I mean, 26 starts last 2 years at Notre Dame. That's not small for being on that offensive line. Cignetti gets 5 of his top 7 tacklers back. All 3 levels have havoc makers. This defense finished 5th in havoc. I don't know why any of us were surprised, because that's what JMU did all the time that Cignetti was there. The biggest havoc maker, probably corner, D'Angelo Pons, 10 PBUs, 10 passes defensed. I mean, that is just insane numbers here. And I mean, look at some of these passing offenses you're going to go up against. I'm not really expecting that out of UCLA. I'm not really expecting that. Maryland's a corpse. This is an over team, which I didn't think they would be. The schedule you're right, it's tougher. Iowa, at Oregon, at Penn State. They're on back-to-back travel when they go to Penn State. They have 1 bye through their first 11 games. I mean, you're having a bye week before, like, Thanksgiving. Like, why are you having a bye before November 28th against Purdue? That the AD should have really pushed back on some. I know you can't control your scheduling with the Big Ten, but who's taking a bye week before Thanksgiving? That's strange. So there's just only 1 bye. I noticed that in the schedule. Didn't like it. The good news is there's just 4 conference road games, and it's against competition like Purdue and Maryland. So it's a completely survivable conference schedule. 7 games. I got the Hoosiers as double-digit favorites. I'm going to play the over.
Don't hate it. All right, let's move on to Nebraska. Nebraska finally broke their bowl drought last year, and now this is Matt Rule year 3. In his previous stops, year 3, 11 wins and 10 wins. Does he make that jump this year? Guess what? Nebraska, 1-5 in one-possession games last year. Is that just what we expect? They are 10-35 in one-score games since 2018. 35 losses, 35 one-possession losses. The next most over that time, NIU with 25. They have 10 more than anybody else. 0-27 versus ranked teams in their last 27 games. They're 0-8 in overtime since 2018. Do you want to know how many yards they've gained in those? -20. They've been outscored 39-0 in those 8 overtime games. Is this the year this team, everything breaks their way? Their injuries last year were bad. One-possession games. Their special teams were an absolute disaster. And they even got good kicking, and they were still a bottom 10 unit. I think their special teams might be fixed from everything I'm read and seen. They have a good kicker. Apparently, they have a new Aussie punter. But they got a new special teams coordinator. I like the hire. They've looked good in spring. Can they just snap? If they can just snap it consistently, they'll be better, because that cost them some games, not just last year, but in recent seasons. Defense is probably the question with this team. They lost a lot. I mean, the defensive line, you lost your top 5, a bunch to the NFL, one to the CFL, one to LSU, one to Ole Miss. They're going to need some inexperienced guys to step up there. Linebacker, you lost a bunch as well. You need Watson Trent to really step up. The Georgia Southern transfer, McGahee, Shavers have to make a sophomore leap. The secondary should be strong. You lose Gifford, but everyone else is back. I really like this secondary, but they're not going to have as good of a defensive line as they did last year. You lost your defensive coordinator. You lost your defensive line coach. The defense is the big question for me on this team. Offensively, the offensive line gets a ton of guys back from injury. It's been 3 straight injury plague years from the offensive line. So you lose 3 guys, but you get a bunch back. You add some guys. The offensive line has some potential here if they stay healthy. Tight end, wide receiver, you lose 3 to the NFL. You add Dane Key, Hunter from Cal. Hunter Harburg's moving to tight end, the old quarterback. He's an athletic freak. We'll see what he can do there. Remember, Dana Holgerson took over as offensive coordinator late last year. He's got a full offseason to install his offense.
Beat Michigan.
Yep. Can Dylan Raiola take the next step? I mean, and the depth is really shaky. He's got to stay healthy and he's got to take the next step. Apparently he wants to use his legs more, but he had 4 touchdowns, 9 interceptions over his last 8 games last year. He has all the tools. Can he make that leap and play more consistently and give this team some explosiveness? I mean, they were bottom 10 in both running and passing explosiveness last year. There was just no explosiveness whatsoever. And this defense was really, really good. I don't think it's going to be as good this year. So Raiola is going to have to make that leap and consistently to take this team to the next level. From a scheduling perspective, you avoid Oregon and Ohio State. You have 5 Big 10 home games. You start the season with Cincy in Kansas City. It's technically a neutral field. You host Michigan. There's a lot of winnable games on this schedule. What are you seeing with the Cornhuskers?
I think Dana Holgerson taking over for Marcus Satterfield was the best move, especially for a quarterback like Dylan Raiola. One of the highest returning experience marks around him on offense. He finished 17 to 12 big time throw to turnover worthy play rate, 4.7% turnover worthy play rate when there's pressure. Those are actually really good marks for a freshman. I mean, that's usually what we see in year 2 from these highly recruited quarterbacks. So 17 to 12 big time throw to turnover worthy play means this could be an even bigger year for Raiola in year 2. The biggest issue for the offense is the playmakers. Outside the top 100 in big play rate, they were 114th in finishing drives. I expect that to change with Dana taking over as offensive coordinator and Dane Key joining. I mean, 2.5 yards per route run for a wideout at Kentucky last year. That's impressive. So Raiola should be protected. There's over 130 starts returning to the offensive line. So I don't have a lot of questions about the offense. I think that they should improve. I still think they should be a top 35 rushing success rate team, top 50 in line yards. They've got to improve in havoc allowed, which was 70th. So a little bit less mistakes with a quarterback that's now a year older, and they should be good. Now, the defense loses nearly all their leaders in sacks, but they do maintain 20 PBUs stuck. A 3-3-5 is going to be put in by DC John Butler. Inexperienced defensive line, transfer linebackers. That's really going to be the focal point to see if this team can remain as, I think they were 32nd line yards, 25th in havoc, 25th in pass rush. Well, that's all under a microscope now when you are completely fielding a brand new front 6 in this 3-3-5 with a new defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and their secondary, which is experienced, might not benefit from the same pass rush and dominant defensive line.
Exactly.
This is the question with this team. Raiola, let's take the lead. The special teams fixed. I'm optimistic, but the defense, the front 7 is the question.
And that's why I think the play that I've got from a game of the year perspective, I was waiting to do it in here because I make the number much higher. Michigan minus 3.5 on September 20th against Nebraska. I think it should be 6.5. SP Plus makes it 10.5. I do not like what I see from the front of Nebraska. And I don't think that they're going to be, Houston Christian, Akron, maybe Cincinnati in the opening game. I don't know. But I just think what Michigan's going to do on the ground, I know you don't like the offensive line, but I dislike the Nebraska front 6 a lot more than I am uncomfortable with the Michigan offensive line. So I think a game of the year perspective, Michigan minus 3.5 is there.
Let's move on to USC, a team we're both pretty high on coming into the year. But it's not like there's no questions here. This is the team that's 90th in returning production. They only have 9 returning starters. Maeva's back at quarterback. He took over late last year. He's more mobile. I think it's a better fit with Riley. Inconsistent last year, but now he's got a full season and usually trusts Riley with quarterbacks. Can he play more consistent? You even saw that in between games with Maeva. Marks is gone and Joyner in the backfield, but they got a really good JUCO and this kid Jordan. Their backfield will still be good. You lose a bunch of receivers to power 4, but you got Lemon and Lane, one of the best receiver duos in the country. I love them. Bring in a Boise transfer, maybe Fair steps in there. And McCree's back at tight end, although he was injured in spring. The offensive line, major questions. Like, they might start, Wingfield from Purdue at left guard, your center from Syracuse, Reed, your right guard, Noah, he was awful last year. Right tackle, there's a battle. Left tackle, Page is back. Like, this is where it all could go downhill, is the offensive line. The defensive line, you lose a lot. They lost Alexander, who cares? He didn't even play last year. They lost Muhammad, who I think is the big loss. But Lucas comes back from injury. You had the nose tackle Silver from UK. He's okay, but gives you size. They beefed up a lot, which they needed to do. Jared and Pepe, and they have a lot of size now up front, which they were lacking in last year. From the back seven, there's some guys that are back. They lost some guys. I want to see how the secondary plays out. Will Ramsey potentially play nickel? We'll see. They added some interesting pieces. Fitzgerald from NC State, Johnson from UCF. We'll see who the CB2 is. Is it Nicholson? Is it the redshirt freshman, potentially? I love Harvey, who they got from San Jose State. I think he'll start. But there's a lot of questions there. They lost some talent in the back seven. Get Gentry back from injury. That's big. Yep. So there's some pieces here to work with. Lynn, astronomical rise in the defense last year. Yes. I think they can take another step this year. But I do want to see how the secondary plays out. I like the size now they have up front. They did lose a really good punter. Something to note. I haven't got enough special teams talk in so far.
Don't have fun if you don't get the fourth down.
Yeah, the last year they were a few plays from starting 11-0. They were going into the final week. Only 6 teams led in the fourth in every game. It was USC, Boise, UNLV, Ohio State, Oregon, and Notre Dame. Those 5 other teams had 5 combined losses. USC had 5 losses total. So they lost a lot of close games last year. From a scheduling perspective, it's not easy for sure, but I like this team. I like where they're headed. What are you seeing with the Trojans?
I like this team too, almost to the point of love. I mean, Jade Maeva struggled against Nebraska, 3 turnover-worthy plays in Week 12. Then he posted 6 big-time throws against Notre Dame secondary in Week 14. I mean, that secondary was all-world, right? And to do that against Al Golden's secondary, I'm a Jaden Maeva buyer, still am since the UNLV days. Brian Jackson takes over running back. He didn't really have any flashy numbers from creating missed tackles or any yards after first contact over the last 2 games against Notre Dame and Texas A&M. So we'll see how he pans out, is what we would expect from a USC running back. But Mekhi Lemon, 3.3 yards per route run. I mean, for those of you that are new to that stat, anything over 2 is explosive. 3.3. That's more than Zachariah Branch with less catches. Jacoby Lane, absolute burner at wideout. I have no questions about the offense from an explosive EPA perspective. They could improve in other parts. They were 120th in pass blocking. So give Jade Maeva a little bit more time here. We'll see what he can do. Lincoln Riley's offense finished 85th in finishing drives, not really getting as many touchdowns as you should, getting more field goals and are not scoring at all. That needs to improve, but it's still Lincoln Riley's offense. We'll see what he can do. 35th in quality drives, I expect to keep up. Massive improvements on defense across the board with defensive coordinator Danton Lynn. I don't think people realize that this USC defense 2 years ago was bottom 10 in every single category you could possibly be in. Last year, they finished 14th in PFF tackling, 50th in D on passing success rate, 52nd in defensive finishing drives, best in the nation limiting passing downs explosives, number 1 in the nation in not limiting an explosive pass, and second and third and long. That is really impressive. I mean, Danton Lynn should win the Broyles Award. I mean, that's really impressive. Now the defensive front seven has increased size and depth, and you mentioned Eric Gentry. He's going to be one of the best outside linebackers in all of the Big Ten. Corner Kamari Ramsey has been with Lynn in his system since UCLA, so I see that being a good fit. You're right, there are some questions in the secondary, but again, the improvements here. This is another year of Danton Lynn. I think the sky's the limit here. I've liked him ever since he was hired into UCLA off of the Ravens staff. This was a coup to get him in the first place for Lincoln Riley. I expect 4 wins to start the season before a trip to Illinois. There's a bye week before hosting Michigan. There's 2 coin flips that remain on this schedule at Nebraska, and they host Iowa. if they can beat Michigan at home, my question is can they make the Big Ten championship with just a loss to Oregon on this schedule? You look at this schedule.
No Penn State, no Ohio State.
Right. If they beat Michigan, is that 22-1 to win the Big Ten? How much value does that have? That number was 30-1 like a month ago. And
best number out there is 25-1.
Yeah. So I'm probably gonna end up pulling the trigger. I've already got a 4-1 in pocket on Michigan to make the Big Ten championship game. I would like to pull the trigger on USC to make the championship game too, but really they kind of knock each other out since they're playing against each other, and there'll be a tiebreaker there.
But I like USC over Michigan, so
then why don't you make it your official bet to make it the champion? What's the number to make it? I can look.
I might. So like I said, there might be a team that gets in there.
Plus 7.
I also think the depth of the Big Ten is better this year, so like there could be some more upsets than we saw, and like then there's questions with Ohio State and Oregon.
Plus 750 to make the championship game.
I prefer that over Michigan.
I don't disagree.
I mean, they did lose. They lost 4 defensive backs to the NFL. Smith, Covington, Humphrey.
So who's going to get on them? Childs in Michigan State. I just already said Luke Altmaier doesn't have the wideouts to get into that because their slots are going to go over the middle. I mean, I'm looking at this schedule. Michigan's going to throw that deep? No. Nebraska, Raiola, they don't really have wideouts. Northwestern doesn't have anybody.
Yeah, we don't like more. It's a really good schedule to have questions in the secondary. And they have time to figure it out, like Missouri State, Georgia Southern, Purdue, Michigan State to start the year.
Now, Oregon could be a problem for that secondary. Oregon could be a real problem for that secondary. But, I mean, it's also 22-1.
Or Dante Moore throws 7 pick sixes, which he likes to do. And he won't be in LA. But, all right.
It's not a Dante Moore podcast anymore.
I don't mind the upside with USC. I project them. Yeah, I project them close to 8.5.
Yeah,
so,
I like them.
I still think they're overstaking some money, but I still think that there's over 7.5 minus 130 out there. Plus 480 to make the college football playoff for what it's worth. All right, let's move on to Washington. Damon Williams time at quarterback. Guy can move.
Yeah.
Looked great in the bowl game. Still needs to get better with his downfield passing. Jedd Fisch is back. I love Jedd Fisch. Remember last year it was starting brand new, one returning starter. And they still had a really great year, even though they were 1-3 in one possession games. Special teams is a question here, just like with Nebraska. They were a bottom 5 team last year. New punter, maybe a new kicker. Is it going to be Grady Gross again? Apparently he looks good in camp. We'll see. They got the kicker from Illinois. He's 1-for-1 in his career with a 59-yarder, and he hit that to cover a number against me last year. But they got a new special teams coach. They implemented a quality control guy there. So I like what they're doing. That department. Fish is smart. The defense does lose a lot, but they got a lot bigger on the defensive line, which they needed to do. So I like that. That was a huge weakness last year. Offensively, you got Williams back at quarterback. We saw flashes from last year. Coleman back at running back. Boston back at receiver. You did lose some guys. You lost Jackson to the NFL. Latu, your tight end. The offensive line last year was bad. And all the guys they lost were bad. Like, I don't care about any of the losses that they had. You had Carter Willis from K-State at left tackle. That's an upgrade. Hatchett at guard. I think that's an upgrade from Oklahoma. He might move to center. Or the other Hatchett might move to center. There's 2 Hatchets now, I think, on their offensive line. You might have you're going to have a new offensive guard. I don't know. I think the offensive line should be better.
Near dead last in pass blocking. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was just the losses aren't always a bad thing here. So defensively, I think they got bigger. Linebacker, you did lose your leader in Bruner, but you added Al Ukta, who I like from Washington State, Alexander, Manu. So I like the secondary ads too. I like their corners with Davis and Prysock. Safety's a little questionable. Probably going to be like a New Mexico and FIU transfer. So there's questions. We'll see. Esteen will probably take one of those spots, but there's questions in the safety department. I like this team, but it's going to come down to Williams. From a scheduling perspective, they do play 5 teams coming off byes, which isn't ideal. They get Ohio State, Oregon, and Illinois all at home, and they do have tough travel spots. Ultimately, They faced seven of the top 10 in the Big 10 last year. Only projected to face 5 this year, so it's not easy, but it's I think it gets easier this year than it was last year, and it's year 2 of Fish. Win total here for Washington, best out there, over 7.5 minus 105, plus 920 to make the college football playoff, 50-1 to win the Big 10. Depth is still very young across the board. Like they're building this up, but it's still very young. So if there's injuries, things could go really wrong. But it's going to come down to Williams and how he progresses as a passer. What are you seeing here with Washington, who will also have a new defensive coordinator, Ryan Walters, after his disastrous produced with Belichick out to join his dad in Chapel Hill?
Yeah, I mean, I thought losing Steve Belichick was going to be rough for Washington, and then they replaced him with Ryan Walters. And you just scrap the whole Purdue thing because Ryan Walters was an absolute beast as a defensive coordinator at Illinois. It was a big loss for Bielema. And there's going to be some balance in this defense now. I mean, Steve Belichick was excellent in calling against the pass. Passing success rate for Washington defensively last year, 7th. Defensive rushing success rate, 117th.
They also didn't have the dudes up front either. They were also pushed around a lot.
Yeah, and so I think Ryan Walters is going to come in. He's going to add a little bit of balance. I think that those Illinois nasty defenses that he had previously are going to show up here. The defensive backs are still one of the best groups in the Big Ten, thanks to transfer to Cario Davis and Efesvian's Price at corner.
Yeah, you need good corners in Walters, who's going to run a lot of cover one.
Yep. And plenty of depth along the defensive line because the transfers, you already mentioned it, that the FIU transfer is going to be the longest portal move in history up to Seattle. But also, I mean, there's some P4 transfers here on the defensive line beefing it up from Arizona, Miami. I think there's an Iowa transfer in there. So I think they're going to have the bodies to improve against the run. The offense I love. I love Demon Williams. I love running back Jonah Coleman. I think that's going to be an issue for teams that cannot defend zone read. Coleman forced 67 missed tackles and 192 carries. He averaged 4.3 yards after first contact. I don't think Jonah Coleman was talked about enough last year. Demon Williams had nearly the same rate of forcing missed tackles. He added in an 8-to-1 TD to INT ratio. He took over as a starter the last 2 games against Oregon and Louisville in the Bowl. He finished 5-1 TD to INT and a 6-to-1 big-time throw turnover-worthy play rate against Oregon and Louisville. Not like Sisters of the Poor here. Not UC Davis. The offensive line should be improved. I mean, you could get anybody. It's going to be much better. The portal entries are mostly on the interior. They're inexperienced. Blindside tackle Carver Willis started 2 years at right tackle for Kansas State, so maybe there's some stability there. And at the most part, coming in from Kansas State, you would think that there would be, the ability to play offensive line. So I do like what they have on offense going for them. You mentioned it. 5 teams will face Washington off of a bye week. Ohio State, Maryland, Rutgers, Illinois, and Wisconsin. I think with Ryan Walters as a defensive coordinator, I have to ask, will Purdue even score a point on November 15th? That should be quite interesting. Heavy favorites in 3 non-conference games and against Purdue. Both Rutgers at home and UCLA project as TD faves when they're on the road against UCLA. And when you look at this travel schedule, like they only leave the time zone, I think 3 times. Maryland, if that's a real game, Michigan, and then Wisconsin, right? So 3 separate trips. The rest of the time, they're almost always in the state of Washington, 1 trip down to California for UCLA. So I don't think the schedule is as bad as we're making it out to be. I have 8.1 on this team. So I like over 7.5, especially if you can find it plus money. I think there is a plus 105 out there. So I'll take Washington over 7.5.
Yeah, I project them right around 8 wins. So be over or nothing. All right. One final reminder, Windy City Watch Party, week 1. Make sure you join us there if you're in the Chicago area. I cannot wait to see all of you. Let's take a break here. That's 9 teams. Part 2 coming up next. We'll start with Iowa and then go through Wisconsin, Rutgers, Minnesota, Michigan State, UCLA, Northwestern, Maryland, and Purdue. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, unsubscribe, tell a friend, 5-star review. Thanks for joining me, Colin. I'll see you in 1 minute. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Make sure you check out the Action Network app as well. Follow all of our picks there. Best app in the game. We'll see y'all for Part 2. Cheers.
Peace out.